Greetings, wrestling fans, and welcome to Fannin's Flashbacks, the podcast that nobody asked for, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. This podcast is going to cover tales from IWA Mid South during my 12 years with the company, and it will be a part of the VNMVS Podcast Network. This podcast is intended for mature audiences only due to the foul language and graphic details about deathmatch wrestling that it will contain. This will be your backstage pass to get a peek behind the curtain at what led to the downfall of the craziest independent wrestling promotion of the late 1990s, early 2000s. And without any further ado, Nick Manawa, hit the music. Greetings, wrestling fans, and welcome to this episode of Fannin's Flashbacks. It's the podcast nobody asked for, but I decided to give it to you anyway. These are tales from IWA Mid South during my time there from 1997 to 2009. And I am joined today by one of my former heavyweight champions. As a matter of fact, he is one of the two people that I have led to two different IWA Mid South heavyweight title reigns. He is a member of the Superheroes before there was even a Fannin family. He is the Rugby Thug, Trent Baker. How you doing today, Rugby?
I am good. Good morning to where you're at. Good afternoon where I'm at.
Yes.
It's been a while. It's been so long since we've chatted. I've lost my fake British accent. That's how long it's been. But yeah, I've listened to all the shows. I've learned a lot about IWA Mid South before, during, and after my time there. So it's been very educational.
Yeah, that's the one thing that everybody's told me that's listened is, like, even Nick Manawa will reach out and be like, I learned things, you know, there. So each episode, you know, somebody might think that one of the episodes, oh, Rich Wayne, why is Rich Wayne on here? Oh, why is Ben Rich on here? Why is you know, why am I bringing my friends that, you know, I got into and it's like, they've got some great stories. They know all of my skeletons. They know where all the bodies are buried, and they have some good stuff to add. And people sleep on those episodes and they miss some of the best stories. You know, like Rich Wayne's episode, I crack up every time he tells me the story about his dad yelling at Sherry Bartell and how he's like, you know, hey, in the future, my good friend's gonna, you know, and I mean, you miss out on those things if you skip an episode. There's always something to be learned. So very glad to have you. And, you know, you're talking about the time change between the United Kingdom and here. A story about that. And I'm sure I probably told you when it happened 25 years ago, but, you know, that so long, you may not even remember it. But my girlfriend at the time was working at the mall in one of, there was like two malls right there by where we're running, and she was working in one of them at the Dakota Watch Factory. And one of the marks from the shows like recognized her from the shows and was like, what are you doing working here? And she's like, what are you talking about? And the guy's like, you're Jim Fannin's girlfriend, aren't you? And she's like, yeah, but what does that have to do with me working here? And he's like, well, you shouldn't have to work. He's flying in Rugby Thug from England every week for IWA. So why do you have to work? And she was like, well, I don't have to. It's just, it gives me something to do when he's doing the wrestling and planning and all this other stuff. And I was just like, cracked me up that, you know, there was people that, at least one person thought that I was flying you in from England twice a week, maybe once a week. I don't know when he thought that you were like flying back and going back and forth when we're running Wednesdays and Saturdays. You know, you were a jet lagged champion, my friend.
I can only imagine what the trans was for those weekly shows, but that's great though that she was like keeping kayfabe and didn't, you know,
right? You know, she was like, I hope you're okay that I said that. I was like, that was the perfect answer.
Yes, exactly. You know, she could have said, oh, he lives like 3 hours away in Ohio. So no, that's great. There were certain people, Miss Donna, who just, I know she hated all the heels, but I like to think that maybe she hated me just a little bit more, but like fans like that, man, that was so great. I remember too, this might have been like my first or second time there, and I'm like trying to sneak out of the building after the show, and one of the fans saw me, and she was like, "Well, look who it ain't," and I didn't, I'm like, I'm not gonna try and just quietly,
Yeah.
And I remember I tried to open the door, and it was like push instead of pull, and someone's like, in this country we pull the doors this way, and I'm just like, all right, but I just kept quiet and just go,
Nice,
I didn't want to,
nice.
but yeah, good times.
And we miss like the generation before us would have all these stories of like, the fans slashing their tires, breaking their lights, do whatever, and it'd be almost like out of Roadhouse where Patrick Swayze has to drive the beater car to the bar. So like when the people that he throws out gets mad at him, they're just breaking the beat up car instead of his fancy BMW, Mercedes, whatever it was that he had in the barn where he was staying. And part of me is like, well, I'm thankful that because I definitely would have had stuff broken and slashed on my car. You definitely would at that point. So kind of sad that we missed that, but also kind of glad that we didn't. Not sure how we would have been reacting to things like that.
I would always have my hat on, hat down over the eyes, kind of getting out, because I didn't want anybody slashing the tires on my old '93 Buick Skylark. So, but 50s or 60s, you had to worry about the ringside grannies with their sewing needles and getting stabbed like that.
Bricks in the purse.
I was fortunate. Other than Miss Donna, get in my face, I didn't really have any issues with the fans, so I was fortunate in that regard.
Now you were there for Old Man Charlie with Miss Donna. Did he was he giving it to you as much as she was, or was he more laid back?
I think she was a little more vocal, but he didn't like me either. I remember one time me and Ian had a little brawl, and we got a little too close to Charlie and the heater, and so people thought, oh, this might be this is legit here, these because these are those, you stayed away from Charlie, you stayed away from the heater, and we
you could burn the hell out of your leg, catch your pants on fire on those damn jet fuel heaters that we had going in the barn in the middle of the winter time. But before we just fully dive into IWA Mid South stories, I always start off by just trying to get to know the backstory of the guests and how they got into wrestling, how they became wrestling fans. So how did little Rugby Thug, while he's playing with his rugby ball, how did wrestling end up catching his eye?
I think the Rock and Wrestling cartoon. That's kind of my earliest memories of wrestling.
They had that in England?
They did, yes. They did. It was worldwide. I was about 6 or 7, and I was kind of a casual fan at that point. 1988, that was the year that I became a serious fan. I was 9 years old. That's when I started watching all the shows, getting the magazines. That was the first year that I went to a live wrestling show. And it was at the South High School in Springfield, Ohio. And my dad took me and my buddy Justin. And we actually knew one of the wrestlers on the show. He was a former neighbor of ours. He wrestled as the Sunshine Man, Dave Seacrest. Now, don't call him the Sunshine Kid. My dad made that mistake. He's like, I'm the Sunshine Man. I don't know what the nicknames meant. He kind of looked like a buff Bob Villa from This Old House.
Okay.
But his shoot job was he worked at Culligan, and we had a water softener. And the water softener was in the closet in my bedroom. And he would come over and deliver the big bags of salt pellets. And he would see, the wrestling posters on the wall. So he knew I was into wrestling. And we would talk about it. And he would kayfabe me, which looking back, I appreciate. He could have, it's like telling a kid Santa Claus isn't real. And we would, talk about the wrestling stuff. He was on the show. Skipping ahead a little bit, when I actually got into wrestling, like my third or fourth match in Springfield at the old Freedom Road Center, I wrestled a guy, Victor Vicious, who his shoot job was a lawyer, which, believe it or not. But Victor beat me. After the match, he's putting the boots to me. And who comes to my rescue? The Sunshine Man, Dave Seacrest. So it was kind of like this full circle moment. Yeah, going from talking about wrestling in my bedroom to me actually do it and him, coming to my save. But I remember that first show, there was a fake Kamala. It wasn't Kamala Jr. It was like Kamala la la la, whatever. There was a guy doing a Patriot gimmick. Don't think it was Del Wilkes or Tom Brandy, so I don't know who it was. But also that year, October 22nd, went to my first WWF show. It was a house show, Hara Arena in Dayton. Now, I never went to any big-time wrestling shows. I never saw the Sheik like Kickboxer did, so I'm a little jealous about that. But the main event for that show was Macho Man Randy Savage defending the WWF title against King Haku. Ooh. And it was looking back, that was a pretty solid, I guess you could say that was an A card. Blue Blazer beat Steve Lombardi pre-Brooklyn Brawler in the opener. Heart Foundation was on the show. Ted DiBiase against Hercules. So it was a pretty solid show. And I went to Hara Arena many times after that, WWF, WCW. Went to the ECW Heat Wave pay-per-views 98, 99. Went to shows at the Nutter Center, saw King of the Ring 93 there, which was pretty cool because Bret Hart's always been one of my favorite wrestlers. So to see him win the title or win the King of the Ring tournament was pretty cool. Until that son of a bitch, Jerry Lawler, ruined it. But Bret got his revenge 2 years later in the Kiss My Foot match. But I, just throughout high school in the 90s, I was a big wrestling fan. A lot of people go through phases where they kind of go in and out of wrestling. But I was always into wrestling. I graduated high school in 97. Went to school in Columbus, but it wasn't what I really wanted to do. So I quit school, but I was still living and working in Columbus. And I was flipping through channels one day, and I came across this local wrestling on the public access channel. And I mean, it looked as low rent as as you could get. It looked like it was in somebody's basement, but I didn't care. It was wrestling because I was going to watch it. And they had a little commercial advertising the wrestling school. And I was like, because wrestling was something that I wanted to do. I didn't think it was something I was going to do full time, but it was something that I wanted to, get into. There was a school in Lima, Ohio, that Al Snow, I don't know if Al was still associated with it at the time, but I know at one point he was, the trainer and stuff like that. And so I was kind of thinking about maybe going there. But then when I saw this promotion, the promotion is IWA. And I'll say IWA Columbus so people don't get confused with the other one. So I called, and this was like November 98. So I was 19 years old, and I went down there for my, tryout or whatever. And the first person I met was the referee, Bud Hattering. And anybody associated with IWA Columbus at the time, they knew Bud and his wife, Kat. They were characters. And so this is like the first person I met, in the wrestling business. And he was talking to me, and he even got in the ring and showed me a few things. And then Wild Bull Miller showed up. And Bull Miller was he was a wrestler, promoter, ran the school. Kind of similar to Ian Rotten in some ways. He was a brawler that bled a lot, was carny. But I knew who he was. Seen him at shows in Springfield and whatnot. And he came in and he talked to me. And I think he had me put him in a hammerlock and stuff, I remember. And I decided to sign up for the school. And I forget how much it was, but it was like $50 a month, And so I started training there. And the training wasn't real structured. There were times where they tried to have it more, structured, but a lot of times you would just go in there and wrestle with the guys and learn stuff that way. And so I did that for like 6 months, and I had my first match April 1999. And I came up with the name Trent Baker because I like the name Trent. There weren't a lot of Trents in wrestling at the time. There still aren't. Baker, I got that from another public access show. I watched this guy. He was the host. He was crazy. It's like, oh, Trent Baker, okay. And I ordered a singlet, and I got these really nice boots. They were like $200, but they were really nice. I still remember the UPS driver delivering them and my little studio apartment and opening the box and seeing them for the first time. And I'm like, oh, I'm a wrestler now. And some of the guys refer to me as the kid with the boots. But I had my first match April '99 against Shank Dorsey, who some people might remember. He had some matches, IWA Mid South. Probably the most famous match he had there was against Axel Rotten, 2001 King of the Death match. And it was actually the main event, first match, main event. And I remember it was decent for a first match. I took a chair shot to the back on the outside, which hurt, which stung pretty good. And so, yeah, that was my first match. And I was just plain old white meat, babyface Trent Baker for a few months, not winning very many matches. And I wanted to come up with something that would come up with like a gimmick, something that would make me stand out, something different than what I was doing. And I was reading a Wrestling Observer, and I was reading about a Japanese wrestler who played rugby before he did wrestling. And it wasn't part of his gimmick. It was just his background. And I was like, rugby. It's like not real popular in the United States, but over in the UK, it's pretty popular. I could probably pull off a fake British accent. I went to a sporting goods store, bought an actual rugby ball, the same one that I had throughout my entire, run. And I got a jersey, found an Adidas jersey, had Rugby Thug on the front, T Baker one on the back. I eventually bought an actual rugby jersey. I think it was an Australian team. And it took forever to get the jersey. And I thought for a while I got ripped off. So I sent him an email, threatening to contact the International Better Business Bureau, which I don't think even exists. So I actually, and the jersey arrived. It just takes a really long time to get stuff from Australia. And then they sent me another one because of the email. But, and I took a pair of black socks, cut the bottoms off, put those over my boots to make it look more like a, rugby player. And we did the big heel turn when I was still just Trent Baker, turned heel. And then the next week I explained that IWA Columbus they didn't want me to reveal my true identity. They wanted me to be this all-American boy and stuff. But I had turned heel, and this was who I really was. I was a rugby player from Britain who was so vicious that I got banned from the league. So I come over to the United States, start doing wrestling, and I joined a heel group called the Casanova Clique, which was a tag team, Chip Allgood and the other white meat Dale Johnson. Chip Allgood had a couple matches in IWA Mid South as Cliff Hanger. Cliff with a K. He only maybe did like one or two matches because he showed up in Charlestown unannounced, and he knocked on the door, name dropped me because he knew I was wrestling. So I came in and I had no idea. I was, oh, it's Chip. And I vouched for him because he was a good worker and he did teach me a lot, more than the actual trainer, did. But and then there was a manager, and he was Luscious John Ellering, but I always called him Precious because of the other Ellering manager. I just couldn't help it. I could never call him
right.
Luscious. So after I became the Rugby Thug, started getting a push, getting more wins and stuff like that. You do a lot of 6-man with the Casanova Clique. And then the 2000 Columbus Wrestling War began because there was another promotion that started up called FIW, Fire and Ice Wrestling. And the promoter, he didn't have really any experience. I think his intentions were good. He was ambitious. But myself and a lot of the other guys kind of jumped ship. Shank Dorsey kind of gave me the heads up as what was going on. And we jumped ship to FIW. And he ran shows on a semi-regular basis. They didn't draw big crowds, and eventually he took a break. And at that point, I was like, I'm going to start looking at getting work elsewhere outside of Columbus. So I got found a website that had the addresses of different promotions. One of the promotions was IWA Mid South, and back at that time, 2000, internet was still pretty early. But I Googled IWA Mid South to find out about the promotion and stuff. I was like, okay. So I sent a tape and a little promo picture, and I sent a resume. And it wasn't on Crown, like Necro Butcher. It was typed out and printed out. And I remember on the resume, I put that I trademarked the Rugby Thug gimmick, which was complete crap. But I was paranoid. I was paranoid about anybody stealing the gimmick. I wanted to be the only guy doing a rugby character, And so I put that in the resume. I would later find out Peter B. Beautiful told me that there was another guy somewhere doing a rugby gimmick. And I was like, I was crushed. I wanted to be the only one. But I eventually heard from you a couple, maybe weeks or so after that, inviting me down to IWA Mid South. This was like December. And I still remember that conversation. It was wintertime, but what you didn't call late, but it was already pitch black at like 5 o'clock. And I remember you kind of giving me directions, and because of course this is before GPS and all that.
Right.
And I remember you saying, we used to have a sign out by the road, but we don't anymore. And the way you said it kind of made me think, like, what happened to the sign? Like, was there a good story behind why the sign is no longer there? But I don't know.
More than likely it was because we used to have like one of those signs where it was like the light up arrow, and then you could like put the letters on it or whatever. So I'm sure the answer is that Ian Rotten wasn't making the payments.
Okay.
Because I know we didn't buy it outright. Probably had to rent it, and not sure what the pricing was on it, but yeah, we used to have the sign that we could like have out there, and then for a while it was, the guy like just past the turn off to go down to the barn, had like this big tractor parked at the road. And so there, then for a while was, well, if you make it to the tractor, you've gone too far.
I here 26 years later, I finally know the story behind the sign. But yeah, so this was December of 2000, and I made my debut. I remember I drove down by myself. I got there like way early. And there was like, I think maybe like the sound guy and Ian, and those were like the only people. And I arrive and I meet Ian, and I knew who he was because I remember watching the GWF shows on ESPN when I was in high school, and then later ECW, him and Axel, 1995 Feud of the Year for Pro Wrestling Illustrated. But I remember one of the first things Ian said to me was, you look thicker in person than you do in your photo. And I've got the picture here. This was one of the photos that I sent. So I remember this picture was taken, me, Sherman Tank, another wrestler who would go on to wrestle was Matt Mason, took those photos in his laundry room of his apartment. And then he took them to Kinko's and got them made up and stuff. It's not even an 8x10. It might be a 5. But he was right. I probably was thicker when he met me. And at first I was like, "Oh, is that good? Is that bad?" He didn't say fat, so I was like, "Okay, I'll take it." But I remember he was telling me about Corporal Robinson, because that was going to be my first feud. And of course, remember back at that time, there's no social media. Internet was still early. I was not familiar with him. Didn't even know what he looked like. I was thinking maybe Corporal Kirshner. You know, he did not look like Corporal Kirshner, but Ian was telling me, working with Corporal, you got to lay it in, or he's not going to sell, or, stuff like that. I was like, oh, okay, well. But I did meet Corporal, and yeah, he was not what not what I expected. But and I also remember I hadn't worked a lot outside of Ohio. I hadn't worked for a lot of different promotions, so I probably should have been going around introducing myself, but I just kind of sat there. And I remember like Colt Cabana came up to me and introduced himself and stuff. But so that first night I didn't have an actual match. I was just there to do a run in to start the feud with Corporal. And if you remember, the door that you go out to had that little slot that you could peek out. Yeah. And so I'm there, and I'm waiting for kind of like my cue to do my run in, and like people are standing kind of blocking my view. So I'm like, right. Oh. So I kind of go in the office and I tell Ian, and Sabu was on that show. And anybody who knows me knows like Sabu's like my favorite wrestler of all time. Been my favorite wrestler since I was like 14 or 15. You wouldn't know it from my style of wrestling. But like, so Sabu's in the office. I tell Ian about it, and Sabu's like, just tell him to move. And then I'm just like, oh man, this is like my debut, and I'm gonna like screw this up. And so I go back, and luckily they moved, and so I think Corporal was wrestling Alistair Fear. And so I run in and I hit him with the rugby ball, knock him out, because that was Ian's idea, that the rugby ball was going to be loaded. And so I hit Corp with the ball. Alistair gets the pin, rolls out. I come in, start putting the boots to Corporal, and while simultaneously cutting a promo on him, basically saying that, I'm this proper British athlete. I was one of the toughest rugby players over in the UK. And I hear that you're one of the toughest guys here in IWA Mid South. And so that was the start of our feud, which, I mean, we were married to each other for 4 or 5 months, after that. I remember our first match was just a regular match, because I think we were kind of slowly building up to it. And Ian didn't want me doing any like hardcore stuff right away. But I remember the first match was just a regular match. It was memorable because Corporal potatoed me with a punch, gave me a little shiner, which is not a big deal. I didn't get mad about it. I'm not like, I don't know if he did it on purpose or if it, if he didn't.
We would always have the joke that with Corporal, we called them lottery punches, because sometimes you won and sometimes you lost.
Yeah,
because he would potato the hell out of you sometimes.
Yeah,
and it like wouldn't be on purpose. It would just be, he would throw so many damn punches, and like sometimes they would potato the hell out of you.
Get a few live rounds,
and you'd come back and you'd be like, well, I lost the lottery tonight. Guy.
The funny thing is, though, like, I hadn't told my coworkers that I did wrestling. So when I showed up to work Monday with the black eye, I kayfabed him about it. And I don't know why I didn't tell him, it was, I eventually did, but at that point, I don't know. I just kept it a secret for whatever reason. But that was, first match. And then after the first match, the match just kind of escalated as far as, stipulations. We did like a boot camp match, a Liverpool street fight. But I remember the boot camp match. Again, Ian didn't want me to bleed. He didn't really want me to do any hardcore stuff at the time. So like, Corporal would give me like, he would go to suplex me on some light tubes, but I would reverse it, so he would be the one taking it. And there was a point in the match where he'd grabbed one of those plastic wiffle ball bats that had the thumbtacks on it.
Yes.
And he hit me with the bat, and I got some hardway color from it. And I remember he got in trouble from Ian. Ian like suspended him for 2 weeks because of it. And I was, I don't think there was any like heat on me from Corporal. I don't think he resented me, because
Well, Ian and Corporal was such a combustible
yeah,
relationship from
yeah,
day one. I'm sure like if he suspended Corporal for that, it was actually for something else.
yeah,
And that was the excuse to be able to say it because yeah, him and Corporal, like they butted heads all the time. And there was always like some animosity there and who's a little bit of a who's better
mm-hmm.
kind of little rivalry that they had amongst each other. So I'm sure that was probably the stated reason behind it, but
Yeah,
there had to have been more to it than just that because I mean there accidental hard way color on just about every damn IWA show, so he would have had to have suspended like everybody at that point. So just to give the fans a little bit of a timeline here, it looks like the first match with Corporal was December 30th, 2000.
mm-hmm.
And then the boot camp match was the following week, January 6th,
Mm-hmm.
2001. And then, yeah, he's suspended for 2 weeks and then come back. And it's the Liverpool street fight on
Yeah,
January 20th. And then it looks like after that, then it becomes somehow you must have started getting with Adam Gooch under the mask as the Shadow Kid,
mm-hmm.
where then it's like a 2-on-1 handicap match with Corporal against you two, and then the next week after that it's a thumbtack match with
Mm-hmm.
Corporal and Suicide against Shadow Kid, Adam Gooch, and you. So like if he's putting you in there into a thumbtack match, he must have given up on, because you're gonna, even if he doesn't want you bleeding, if you're in a thumbtack match, you're gonna get a little bit of color anytime you bump onto the thumbtack. So he suspends Corporal for 2 weeks for making you bleed, and then he puts you in a match where there's no option
Yeah, I think
to bleed a little bit.
yeah, I think putting Suicide Kid and Gooch, I think that was just to kind of extend the feud even longer. But I do remember that thumbtack match. That was the first time that I'd ever dealt with the thumbtacks. And as you know, the thumbtacks, they hurt, but they're not going to kill you.
Unless you're barefoot.
Yes. Yes.
Let me tell you, that damn near killed me. That damn near killed me.
Yeah, I kept my boots on the whole time. But it was funny because I think we gave Kid a double suplex. And so I'm selling the thumbtacks in my arm, and Shadow Kid just pops right back up. So that was kind of funny. But I remember, so the finish of that was Suicide Kid put Gooch on the table, and then he climbed up into the rafters as he often did, and gave him a leg drop off the rafters through the table, 1, 2, 3. But after the match, everybody's checking on Gooch, and he's like, I can't feel my legs. And I'm like, I don't know if he's like serious or not. And I'm like, oh. And then we get to the back, and he's like, oh, I'm fine. So it was a very convincing. He worked me on that one, but that was fun to get Gooch and Suicide Kid in the feud. And but yeah, me and Corporal went about 5 months working together, and yeah, I never really had any issues with Corp. I mean, other than the little black eye, which wasn't a big deal. Yeah, working with him was overall, a positive experience. I think we probably went as far as we could, with the feud. And then after that, we kind of
it looks like the feud went through April. There were you had like 1 week,
mm-hmm.
1 week where you got to face Kickboxer in February, and then you got to face Roland Hard like the next week. But then it was right back into the feud with Corporal, and it looks like there was a capture the flag match where you got to team with Tracy Smothers. And that looks like it was on the show where Sandman was there. Did Sandman try to change your finish on you, or did he leave you alone in that match because Tracy was involved?
Okay, so I do remember Sandman being animated and going around. I think it was maybe like the first couple matches that Sandman was trying to play Booker. I don't remember him trying to change our match. That might have been, I think that might have been the show where Sandman and a couple other boys were smoking crack. Or what? Yeah, I'll mention that real quickly because I know Chucky Smooth brought it up in his interview. So maybe like it might have been my debut, and where I saw some of the boys partaking in the Mary Jane. Like you, that's not my thing. And seeing so many Cheech and Chong movies, I thought the only way to do it was a big blunt, but I didn't know that you could smoke it out of a bowl, and so I was just assuming they're smoking crack. And I'd mentioned this to Hero on an AOL Messenger chat because he asked me, "Hey man, what'd you think about it?" And I was like, "Yeah, it was fine. I just saw some stuff, guys smoking crack." And so of course, because this was online, I didn't see Hero's reaction, but I could only imagine the hysterical laughter that probably went on for a good 5 minutes. He loves telling that story. He told that to Fandango when he interviewed him on High Spots. He didn't mention me by name.
Okay.
And then the next show, Ian ribbed me. He's like, I think they're smoking crack in my locker room, huh? but going back to that to the show with Sandman. So Sandman's he's enjoying the Mary Jane, and he looks at me and he says, "That looks like a rugby jersey." And they're like, "Yeah, that's his gimmick," and stuff. But that match with where me and Tracy teamed up with against Roland Hart and Corporal Robinson, I remember telling Tracy before we went out there, I told him, it's an honor to be teaming with you, and which it was. Unfortunately, I think I put a little too much pressure on myself because when we got out there, it was me and Roland starting the match, and my mind just went blank. Which is like the worst feeling that you can have, like out there, when you just when you go blank and you just kind of freeze up. And it was one of those deals where I got off track and never really got back on. And there was a point in the match where Tracy's like, "Get your head in the game." That just made it worse. And I'm just like,
well, that happened to me on my comeback the first night.
Yeah.
With I like forgot how, so I messed up the finish, and then I ended up throwing the chain all the way across the ring, and like the ref kept going, "Do I turn around yet? Do I turn around yet?" And I'm like, "Huh? What? Oh,
yeah.
What?" And then I had the face plant, and it was like, oh God. But luckily it came back to me that second. You're right. There is no worse feeling than when you just go blank and you're like, shit, what the hell am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
Oh crap.
And here, I remember after that match, it was one of the worst that I've ever felt after a match. I had my fair share of bad matches and stuff like that. But when you're out there with somebody that you really respect and I knew I let him down, and I remember Simon Diamond was on the show, and he's trying to talk to me about my boots and stuff and how they reminded him of Tully Blanchard's boots. And I didn't want to be rude or anything, but I'm just thinking like, man, I don't, I just want to crawl in a hole right now. But I remember also later going into Ian's office and telling him what happened. And Dawn Marie was in there, and she told me about a time that she auditioned for like a movie role and how she flubbed it. And just what a sweetheart, just trying to make me feel better about it. And I had my chance though to redeem myself a few months later. I don't know if you want me to. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but the match with Tracy where
we can do that. Yeah.
Okay, so this was a few months, maybe like 3 months later. and I had won the title, and I was defending it against Tracy. And I knew I knew Tracy remembered the tag match, and he was probably thinking like, "Oh, I don't know about this one." But and so I told myself like, okay, I can't screw up again. I got to redeem myself. Um, and so we go out, and I remember just telling myself, just listen to Tracy, just do what he says. He knows what he's doing. Um, there was one point where we were outside and we were fighting in the crowd. And I say fighting, but it was more like Tracy mauling me like a bear. I mean, he was beating my ass good and proper, much like the bear on this Tracy shirt. Um, and he grabbed some nachos and cheese that a fan had gotten, and he hits me over the head with it. And this cheese, I mean, it was like scalding hot. He must have just got it. And I screamed out loud. I mean, and if you're watching the video, it kind of looks ridiculous. Like, why is he, but why is he, it's just nachos and cheese. Why is he, but people don't understand just how scalding hot that this was. And this is another story that Hero loves telling. I like to joke that Tracy and Patty conspired to give me third-degree burns because there was no other reason that cheese needed to be that hot. But
yeah, because they would actually like put the cheese in a crock pot back in the concession stand so that it would be warm.
It was like molten lava. And then I had to work the rest of the match with this dried up cheese on my head. But the match itself, I thought went really well. Like I said, I just listened to Tracy, just did what he said, and I felt like I'd kind of redeemed myself in his eyes after that match. I remember afterwards, we're in the back, and he was kind of giving me pointers. Okay, this was good, or work on this and stuff. We were supposed to have a rematch the following week, but it fell through. So that was the only time that I got to wrestle Tracy, one on one.
And with that match, you redeemed yourself, but then I messed up and made Tracy mad at me in that match because I had cut the promo at the start of the match and I called him an old man. Oh. And when we got into the back, that was like the first time that anybody really actually, because I've talked on the podcast before about, had no training whatsoever. Yeah. I was just thrown out there and just go do. So I cut the promo and I'm like, you're an old man and yada, yada, yada. And we get into the back and Tracy's like, sits me down at the learning tree and he's like, don't ever call your opponent an old man. He's like, if I beat you, you just lost to an old man. So you look like shit. Yeah. And even if you beat me, I'm an old man. What did you just accomplish? Yeah. And I took that with me for the rest of my life and even put it into, like, I get mad now when I'm watching a college game and the crowd starts chanting overrated when like their team's about to beat somebody that's ranked high. And I'm like, you dumbasses, you're just belittling what your team's doing. Don't call the other team overrated because who cares that you just won? They suck anyway, like, don't do that. And it made perfect sense after, Tracy had sat there and be like, don't do that. And so then he like gave me a bunch of pointers and I was like, wow, this is the first time that anybody's actually like sat me down and gave me these kind of pointers. So it was a great learning experience for me. And you got your redemption and then I had to earn redemption later with Tracy, which I eventually did, but he was such a great one to learn from.
Yeah, I would see him give other guys advice in the locker room and stuff, and some of the other veterans too. I remember Sabu wrestled a guy, I think it was Dino Bambino, and he was talking to him. And he's like, if you get lost out there, just grab a hold, like and stuff like that. But yeah, there's the amount of guys, especially in 2001 during that time, after ECW had closed. So a lot of those guys would come in, the Balls Mahoney, Chris Candido, Spike Dudley and those guys. I remember Abdul the Butcher, you know, he came in for one of those Charlestown shows and stuff. So yeah, just a lot of veteran talent there to learn from.
Absolutely. And right at almost as soon as the Corporal feud ends, you know, we talked about that capture the flag match. You beat him in a first blood match like the week after that. Then Blaze and Corporal beat you and Cash in a Falls Count Anywhere. And then he beats you in a Lumberjack light tube match in mid-April. Yeah. And that pretty much ends the feud. But then right off of that feud is the Superheroes, and you are the IWA Mid South heavyweight champion. What is your memories of being able to transition into the Superheroes and then being the champ right after that?
Yeah, you know, winning the title was unexpected. I thought there were guys that were probably more deserving of it, but it wasn't my call, you know. But yeah, the Superheroes group, a lot of talented guys, and me, but I think it was BJ. It was BJ, Hero, and you were managing. I think eventually Prazak and Punk.
Yeah, eventually Prazak, Punk, Ace Steel. As I was going through looking at some of the results here around that, like Todd Morton must have gotten in there for like a match or two. And so there was like the frit, but to me, the Superheroes began, it was, you know, Hero, BJ, and you. That was the run for a few months until I got suspended, and then that led to Punk and Prazak coming in and getting involved since I was out. Not exactly sure why.
Todd, I remember Todd must have been in the group because I remember I wrestled Blue Meanie, and I think Todd was out there with me. Of course, Jasmine St. Clair was with Meanie, and I working with Meanie was pretty cool. There was one spot where I forgot what were, you know, but other than that, but I remember after the match, you know, it was me and Todd were in the ring, and Jasmine came in and seducing us, but it was all ruse because she ended up giving us a double nut shot. But so yeah, Todd must have been in the group for a little bit. But yeah, winning the title, like I said, it was unexpected, but it was cool. I'm glad to be part of that title's lineage. I think it was me and Mitch Page. I think I beat Mitch Page for the title.
Yes,
and I think that was
May 19th, 2001. Just one week after the Superheroes were formed, the previous week when I threw powder in Reckless Youth's face when he was wrestling BJ Whitmer. And then the very next week, you win the title from Mitch. Any specific memories of that match?
Yeah, I think that was the first time that me and Mitch had worked together. I remember he brought out like a big bag of nuts.
Yes.
Which I think he gave me a DDT on at some point in the match, which I didn't even think was humanly possible. But no, I remember working with Mitch was fine. We had like a 3-way later with Roland, which I remember didn't go quite as well. But no, working with Mitch was fine. I think Necro Butcher came in, did a run in, hit Mitch with the rugby ball, and I think the ball dropped, and he's like Necro got on it real quick because it was, you know, supposed to be loaded. And but yeah, working with Mitch was fine. And like I said, yeah, being the champ, I didn't expect it, but you know, it was cool.
And then the very first title defense you have, the week after you win it, you defend it and defeat CM Punk. Do you have any memories of that match? And
Yeah, I think Punk and I think we wrestled maybe had like 3 singles matches. But Punk was a cool guy. I liked working with him. I think he liked working with me. I remember when he had his live journal, he said I was a smooth guy. But yeah, there was so many guys like Punk, Cabana, Hero, Ace Steel, like all those guys were so good, and I knew I wasn't like on their level in the ring, but I felt like I could keep up with them. But I'm just so proud of everything that like Punk accomplished, because he's a guy that just worked his butt off for it. Nothing was handed to him, and he was just a guy that was not going to be denied. And it's still a bit surreal to go into like a Walmart and see his action figure,
Right.
or like tonight I'm going to go watch WrestleMania at a movie theater and he's in the main event. Uh, but he was definitely a guy that I knew. I didn't know he was going to be like the star that he would become, but I knew.
Okay, that was one of the questions I was going to ask is when you wrestled him at
Yeah.
that point, did you ever think, wow, he's going to be like the biggest star in the business at one point?
I don't think maybe anybody did at that time, but I definitely knew like this is a guy that's going to get at least a tryout match. There was there's no Ring of Honor or TNA or anything at that point, so the promotions were more limited back then. But I mean, he definitely had the in ring down, and he had the look and just that whole persona. But yeah, he and Cabana too. I worked with Cabana a few times, and they were just. It was easy working with those guys. I don't remember there being any issues working with them. And but and of course, I Ace Steel as well. I wrestled Ace, I think like three different times in like 3 different cities. We had one match in Charlestown, we had a match in Indianapolis, a match in Dayton,
Right.
and they were all like good experiences. Those guys were, like I said, easy to work with, and yeah, and I would put Hero in that group as well. Um,
Absolutely.
he was one of them. We might talk about him, Hero later on. Um, but yeah, just positive experiences working with those guys.
Okay. And then after the CM Punk experience, but before we move on, I'll add in, you're talking about how surreal it is going into like a Walmart and seeing action figures
Yeah,
for these guys that you worked with and stuff.
yeah,
Like right around the time of the pipe bomb and Punk just really taking off
hmm,
was right around the time that I started working for the Chicago Cubs.
yeah,
And like I'm telling them a little bit about my background, some of the
yeah,
coworkers I've got, and like I think some of them were like not quite believing me in stuff, and then CM Punk came. They were filming for his the DVD documentary Best in the World or whatever they called it,
yeah,
that they had came out with, and he came and he was gonna do the seventh inning stretch, and so they had to, like, security had to get him up to the press box and get him for that. So working as security, I'm out in the bleachers. The supervisor that I think wasn't quite 100% sure that I was telling the truth about, oh, I've worked with Punk for years, I know him real
yeah,
well. So he comes and he gets me and he grabs me and he takes me out of the bleachers and he's like, come with me, we're gonna go and you're gonna get to say, hello to Punk.
mhm,
And so we go over and we're waiting at the bottom of the press box was in the upper deck, and there's like
mhm,
a stairwell to get up into the press box. So we're waiting at the bottom of the stairs. He finishes the seventh inning stretch and he comes down, and the I think they even put like footage of him doing the seventh inning stretch on the DVD as one of the extras or something, because
yeah,
the film crew was there for WWE to film it, and they're filming him and he's walking down the stairs, and he gets to the bottom of the stairs and he sees me and he's like, what the fuck are you doing here? And I'm like, well, I work here now. And he grabs me and he like wraps his arm around me and he starts cutting a promo to the WWE cameras. And he's like, this guy, you know, he was right there from the very beginning and he ran IWA and blah, blah, blah. And like it took like two hands to pick the supervisor's jaw up off the ground. And I was like, I tried to tell you, you know, I tried to tell. And I was like golden after that. It was
they never questioned anything.
Yeah, they didn't question anything after that. They never questioned anything after that. So
that's funny.
But yeah, so I mean, I ended up seeing him several times at Wrigley when he would come to, and he was always pleasant with me and you know, treated me nice and pumped me up in front of the co-workers that I had and made me look more important than what I was. So I always appreciated that, and nice that he, you know, didn't forget where he came from. You know, it would have been easy for him to just sit there and be like, I don't know you, leave me alone or whatever. But the fact that he, you know, would give me the time of day and treat me as an equal, you know, was very nice of him. But after your experience in the ring with Punk, then you go to the extreme, and you're actually in King of the Death Matches, 2001 King of the Death Matches. You go in as the IWA Mid South champion. Looked like you defeated Tower of Doom in a thumbtack match in the first round, and then you lost to Rollin' Hard in a staple gun match in the second round. What are your memories of being a competitor in the King of the Death Matches?
Well, I was not familiar with Tower of Doom. I don't think he'd worked any shows in IWA Mid South before, like when I was there. So I had no idea. Again, you know, I nowadays I could do a Google search, find out everything about him in 10 seconds. But back then it was a little more of a mystery.
Right.
It's funny because
and it is sad that he goes down in history as the very first IWA Mid South heavyweight champion of all time, with the criminal record that he ends up with after this point in time. So it's kind of bad that he's the first ever champion. But I don't think he really did a whole lot of shows after that initial run in the Kmart building. And then I know he started running his own promotion up in Cincinnati and was using Ian and Corporal and Pondo and those guys. And he'd have the ring girls from like the Hustler store that was not too far from where he was running. So Pondo was filming a lot of his Skull Talk episodes with the females from that show. So at that point, I liked going up to the, I think it was called Real Deal. I like to go to those Real Deal wrestling shows and stuff, and getting to witness some of the debauchery that was going on in the locker room at that point. But I don't think he did a whole lot of IWA shows, but at least you can say that you beat him.
You know, it's funny. Some people comment that he kind of looked like a supersized version of me, which I can kind of see it. But I remember, I don't know if you remember, when we went out for the match, you know, walking around the ring, talking trash to the fans. We get to the one side of the ring, and apparently, I think it was Brain Damage had thrown up, or like during his match, and they had mopped it up. And I remember you telling me, like, watch out, this idiot threw up on the floor. So, which is kind of funny. I'm going into a death match, and we're more concerned about slipping on the floor. But I dabbled in the hardcore stuff. A thumbtack match isn't as extreme as some of the other matches in that tournament. So I remember there was one point where Doom was putting the thumbtacks, manually putting them into my forehead, which didn't tickle. But again, like, it's not gonna kill you.
Well, in just a little, like, you know, behind the scenes for the fans at home, technically every goddamn match in IWA Mid South was a thumbtack match, because those thumbtacks were embedded in the carpeting and embedded in
Yeah.
the canvas. So it was always a thumbtack match when you got
Yeah.
into IWA Mid South.
Yeah.
There was no getting around it. So
Yeah, I
so
remember.
they might as well have just build that as a regular match. It just
Yeah.
had some more thumbtacks than usual.
Yeah, I
involved in
remember taking a butter knife to get the one stuck out from my boots. But I remember probably the most memorable thing about that match was the finish. And that's where you had the strap and you put it around Doom's, throat, and he came to the ring wearing a beanie that he took off and put on the ring post. And so the finish was you were choking him with the strap. I noticed the beanie on the ring post. I go over, get it, put a bunch of the thumbtacks in the beanie, put it on his head, go get a chair, give him the chair shot, 1, 2, 3. And which I thought was a clever finish.
Yeah, that's a clever finish. Yeah.
Most people credit Ian for that, but that was Doom's finish. He came up with that. Probably something I'm sure he's done before. And if you go back and watch after I get the pin, I go to roll out of the ring, and then I roll back to him to say, "Hey, thank you." I know I wouldn't want to take that finish. I'm glad he did.
Yeah.
But I remember, that match went fine. The next night, the staple gun match, we're rolling. It wasn't one of the better ones. Roland and I don't know if he and I had worked. We might have worked maybe once before that, or I think all in all, I wrestled Roland in maybe 2 or 3 singles matches.
You did have one singles match about a month before King of the 2 months before King of the, because it was in between that break that you had in the Corporal feud for like one of the matches was against Roland.
I remember. I don't know if that was the bubble bath, the show that had the bubble bath match, but I remember he and I worked that show. And I think that match went fine. I stiffed him a little bit with a forearm, and he gave me a receipt with a punch to the gut. I remember that, but and then the 3-way that we had with Mitch, I remember.
Yeah, you wrestled Roland on the bubble bath match show.
But I remember
he beat you.
Yeah, I remember the staple gun match. There was a spot where I went to give him a sunset flip back into the ring, and it took me like a couple tries to get it. And then this I took he stapled like dollar bill to my forehead, and I remember wrestling the rest of the match with the dollar bill, kind of like I didn't want to rip it out. But at that point, I was kind of glad that was the end of my, because I know like the semifinals, and I did not want to go to the finals because I know that's where it got real extreme. And I was okay just doing the thumbtacks, getting the staple. But I think I was one of only a couple guys that year to do the King of the Death match and the Sweet Science tournament. I know here because Hero had a thumbtack match in the King of Death match. I think it's Corporal. I think he lost that match.
Yeah.
I know me and Hero, maybe Suicide Kid did both tournaments that year. So that was that was I was happy to have done both tournaments, and I was happy I didn't advance further in the death match one.
Yeah. So then after the King of the Death, Ian Rotten wins King of the Death, so he faces you for the title after that, and you get a win over Ian to keep the title. You end up defeating Richard X, Colt Cabana, Necro Butcher, and then you had already mentioned the match with Blue Meanie as your title reign. Any specific memories out of those matches other than like the Blue Meanie one that you had already talked about?
I remember wrestling Richard X in Indianapolis, but I don't remember the Charlestown match. I know I had several matches with Ian, and I really working with Ian was different because, for one, he was the boss. Two, he was old school where he didn't, like to call a lot in the back. He called it,
Right.
which I wasn't really used to. And I just remember also taking a lot of stiff slaps. I remember at one point he told me like clench your jaw, to make the slaps a little more bearable. I remember Prazak was my manager for one of the matches, and him just telling me, "Fight back, Rugby, fight back," and I'm just like, "Oh." So, and then I remember we did a thing, an angle where I hit Ian's arm with the chair, and I was supposed to hit the ring post, and I got a little more of his arm than I did the ring post, and I was like, "Oh, I didn't break his arm or anything like that." He might have been working me a little bit on how much he was hurt, but I remember you quipped, give Rugby an inch, he takes a mile. But and then because that was like we did like a Friday and Saturday show, and then but that happened on the Friday, and I wrestled Ian again the next night, and his arm, I guess I think he might have just
Miraculously healed.
popped it out, yeah, or whatever. But yeah, working with Ian was different. I had the one match with Necro, and I remember we were talking about before the match what we and I just remember kind of like every idea that I had, he was kind of like, why don't we do this instead? And it's just like, it was just like, why don't we do this instead? At that point, I'm just like, okay, we're just gonna do what you want. And I remember like he slapped me within like the first 30 seconds of the match, and like popped my eardrum, and I'm just like, oh god. So I had to go the match with my ear kind of messed up and stuff like that. But other than that, it was okay because he took most of the big bumps and stuff like that. So I was kind of glad that was the only time I worked with Necro. I mean, on a personal level, he was fine. We got along and stuff. But working with him, I was kind of glad it was one and done. But I remember after the match, Pondo saw that I was, I had the ear, which I don't think it was anything serious. But Pondo came over and checked on me, which I thought was pretty cool. But yeah, and like I said, the match with Meanie, I thought went well, and stuff like that. So overall, the first title reign I thought was pretty good.
Yeah. So now we get to the losing the title,
Mm-hmm.
where you lose it in a three-way that had Chip Fairway and Bad Boy Hito, where Bad Boy Hito wins the title July 14th, 2001.
Yeah.
Do you remember anything specific about dropping the title?
Yeah, I'd never worked with Hito before. I know Cage Match had me and Chip listed in a singles match. I don't remember ever wrestling Chip in the singles match. I do remember in the three way, and I wasn't real familiar. I mean, I knew who Chip was, obviously, but I hadn't spent a lot of time with him. And I remember he was a little gruff, not real talkative and stuff. And of course, Hito with his English wasn't the greatest, so it was a little bit of a challenge, going into the match. But I remember it was like an elimination style, and it was one of those deals where they both had me in like submission holds, and I tapped out, and so me losing, it was kind of a flat, way to lose the title and stuff. But it is what it is. I've got a funny Hito story. Maybe later on, if we have time, I'll tell that. But yeah, I mean, it was looking back, it seemed a little random because I think Hito wasn't champion for very long. Or maybe
No, it like almost like right after that he loses
yeah,
to Necro in a non-title
yeah,
loser leave IWA match, and he goes back to Japan, which
yeah,
then vacates the title.
yeah,
That then Suicide Kid wins the tournament,
yeah.
So like 1 week later, after you drop the title to Hito, then Suicide Kid wins it a week later in a tournament to fill the vacancy, and then 2 weeks after that, you beat Suicide Kid to get the title right back. And like, I can understand, okay, we're gonna reward Hito with putting the title on him and making him champion right before he goes back home. Okay. Ian liked to have that international flavor to the title kind of thing. So I sort of get that, but I don't get, like, if you're going to be the champion again 2 weeks later, like, why not just have Hito lose the belt right back to you instead of losing to Necro? Why have Suicide Kid win the tournament? Like, was there something where you couldn't be on a few weeks of shows? And I don't know why he didn't wait to do the tournament until you were back on the show to win it, or like that part. Was anything explained to you as to why it was going to go on to Kid for a couple of weeks?
No, I mean I didn't have any injuries or any other stuff going on. Yeah, because I worked at IWA Mid South about it seemed like every weekend
Right.
for like a year and a half. So yeah, looking back, that it all seemed kind of puzzling. I don't know.
Well, we can chalk it up to 420 booking then, because I don't remember any specifics behind it. And going over it, and we talked before we even started recording on this, how Cage Match didn't even have the show listed that you beat Suicide Kid, and I had to go to Wikipedia to look at the title history to like grab the date, and like, okay, because on Cage Match it's just Suicide Kid wins the tournament, and then he's got a match where he's no longer champion, and then you pop up and you're the champion again, and you're wrestling Road Dogg. Do you have any memories of the match where you regained the title from Kid?
Yeah, I think maybe we had maybe like 2 singles matches, like all together, and we of course had some tag matches and stuff. But yeah, working with him was good. I don't remember us ever having any issues. But yeah, he was like I said, I didn't work with him a whole lot, but the time that I did was good. But yeah, the winning the title for the second time, I don't have a lot of memories of that specific match, but just overall, like working with them was good.
Okay. And the week after regaining the title, you're wrestling the Road Dogg, August 11th, 2001. Any memories of the Road Dogg?
Yeah, that was a big deal because he had just been in WWE shortly before he came to IWA Mid South. So he was still a big star, and it was a big deal. So much so, my buddy Shannon made the trip from Missouri down. My parents actually made the drive down for the show. My dad probably enjoyed it a little more than my mom. But yeah, wrestling a big name like Road Dogg, that was a big deal. But he, like the day before, he had worked a show in Zanesville, Ohio, and Hero and Toolman Tim Taylor were, I think, on that show, and so they were driving Road Dogg. I think maybe stayed with them the night before. So the next day, the day of the show, they came down to where I lived in Springfield, and so I met Road Dogg for the first time. Actually, I say for the first time, but I'd actually met him as a fan at the 1999 Brian Pillman Memorial Show in Cincinnati. Okay. Got not an 8x10, but a Polaroid with Road Dogg. And then 2 years later, I'm wrestling him for IWA Mid South. So, yeah. But I remember Road Dogg was enjoying a few adult beverages. I believe Ice House beer was his beer of choice at that time. And he was in a good mood. And I remember him joking that, oh, if you make me bleed, I'm going to kill your parents and stuff. But just he said it joking. He said it jokingly. But I remember, so we were driving to the show. Road Dogg was with Toolman and Hero, and I was with my buddy Shannon. And we stopped at a rest stop. Road Dogg had to relieve himself, I'm sure, after the Ice House beers, and he was his mood had changed a little bit, and he was a little surly at that point. I'm just like, oh, nah, I got to work with this guy, later on, but he was fine later. And I remember we went out and I cut the promo before the match, and I remember I called the sound guy a wanker because he announced me first and stuff. But the match itself was fine. It just went way shorter than what we anticipated. Road Dogg wanted to take it home early. I guess he felt like the crowd, we lost the crowd or whatever. But I remember Hero did the run in. I got the pin. And so the match, like I said, it was shorter than what we had planned. So maybe it was disappointing for some people, but it is what it is. I remember Road Dogg did the promo after where Ian came out and stuff. And I remember Ian had said on the mic, IWA Mid South, we do drugs and stuff like that. Because that was part of Road Dogg's, release from WWE. And I'm just thinking, oh man, my parents, even though I didn't partake in that stuff, my parents had to hear that. I was just like, oh, but it was cool, to get a win over a guy like Road Dogg. I remember he did a show in Dayton. It might have been, I think, my final show, where he wrestled Punk, and he remembered me. Hey, Rugby, how you doing? But yeah, I remember. Also, it was really hot that night, and the show went really long. And stuff. I think my parents probably left after my match, but yeah, it's cool to have a win over a big name like Road Dogg.
Yeah, I think that was the same show that had. I guess it wasn't. Yeah, that's the one that had the like 50-minute 8-man tag elimination with the superheroes against Too Cold Scorpio. So yeah, that show had Scorpio and Road Dogg on it.
I think if I believe correctly, I think Scorpio like kicked Hero really hard in the head. He did. I think Hero did something that Scorpio didn't like, and he kicked Hero in the head. Probably concussed him a little bit, but
well, that was the match where I almost killed Too Cold Scorpio, double kneeing him in the head on the dive off the top rope and sending him flying. That was the first clip I ever showed people at my job that I work now. They had they always have every year they have this big get together where like everybody comes together, and it's like 3 days of a conference, and all the departments get together. And one of the theme for it a few years ago was like facing your fears. So they were sitting there going, oh, does anybody have like something that they could share of a time that they had to face their fears and they overcame it? And I sent in the clip, and I was like, yeah, this was me scared to death of heights, and yet I'm climbing up to the top rope and jumping out, and I almost kill the star of the match by double kneeing him in it, because they kept going, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? And I'm like, well, I want to do a frog splash. And I was able to bring the knees in, but then I didn't have time to like stretch out, and it just double knees to the temple of Too Cold Scorpio and send everybody flying, and a splat to the ground.
That was payback for him kicking Hero in the head, maybe.
Right. I had your back, Hero. I had your back.
Yeah.
So the week after Road Dogg was the Tracy Smothers match with the nacho cheese incident that we already talked about.
Yes.
Then
Yeah.
after that was the Sweet Science that you had mentioned. In Sweet Science, you lose in the first round to Nova.
Mm-hmm.
Any memories of working with Nova?
Yeah, we had talked a little bit before the match, and he was a nice guy. I think I might have screwed up one of his elaborate spots in the beginning of the match, but other than that, I think the match went well. I know some people kind of questioned the champion going out in the first round, but I believe Nova went to the finals.
Yeah,
Against
I think he
Ace.
made it to the
Yeah.
finals, but that doesn't
And
mean that he had to face you in the first round. You know,
yeah, it
um,
might have been some questionable booking, but I mean, Nova, he was a name, so it wasn't like I lost to some jabroni. But yeah, I don't remember there being really any issues with Nova. And I think that was the only time I think he worked IWA Mid South. I don't
yeah, I
remember
can't
him.
remember him coming back.
Yeah, I don't know before or after. But yeah, it was cool. Like I said earlier, to wrestle in both tournaments. That would have been a tournament that I would want to go further in because there's less damage and
Right,
stuff. But I remember, I think that was a show that ICP was. I think they were at that
yeah,
show, and it had the match the next night. I think with Punk, or the thumbtack match or something like that. But so because ICP was there, it was a pretty good. They had a lot of people, a lot of their fans had showed up. So I remember just
right.
a lot of people in the building and just a good energy and stuff from the crowd. So, but yeah, I didn't have any problems with Nova. I think if I remember, he did something later that annoyed some people. Maybe after the match with Ace, he did something that kind of took away from Ace's moment. I don't I don't remember the specifics of it, but anyways, but wrestling Nova, I was, it was fine.
Okay, so we've mentioned you got to work Blue Meanie, you got to work Nova, you got to work Road Dogg.
Mhm.
Did it mean anything extra to you that Ian was putting you with these big names that he was spending money on to bring into the shows? Did it? I mean, did it make you feel good, or did it just not really did it not matter? An opponent's an opponent. Like, what were your feelings on getting to work these names?
Yeah, I do feel like if he was putting me against these name wrestlers, that it meant that he had confidence in me. Kind of the same way of putting the title on me. Um, it didn't mean that I was the best guy in the promotion because I certainly wasn't. But if he's putting the title, it means that he sees something in me to be able to be the champion and stuff like that. So, but wrestling with those guys, the name wrestlers, was a little different than wrestling guys um, that were more on my level, or um, but like I said, Meanie and Nova and even Road Dogg, even though maybe earlier in the day he wasn't as easy to work with. I didn't have any issues with those guys, but yeah, it just meant to me like he had confidence in me if he was going to put me. There was one name that I was supposed to wrestle that I didn't, and I don't know if I dodged a bullet or not with this one, but I was supposed to wrestle Jamie Dundee on one of the shows, and he didn't. It was even advertised, and for whatever reason, the next week it didn't happen. But I don't know. I don't know if working with Jamie would have been fun or one of those things that have been like,
Well, I mean, he was a talent when he was
mhm.
like in the right mindset to be able to go out there and do anything. I think
Yeah.
I think at that point there was like, if I remember correctly, I think it was you couldn't advertise him
Mhm.
because he had too much uh, child support and alimony owed.
Oh yeah.
That, like, if you advertised him the ex-wife
Mm.
would see the advertisement and then like try to get the cops to meet him at the and stuff because he, you know, for the unpaid stuff. So I think it was Ian had advertised it, and then he called and was like, you can't tell people I'm going to be there because you know then they can come get me. I can, you know, so and there was like some, for a while it was like I think it was like he didn't even want to have to, it was like too dangerous for him to drive through Kentucky to get to the shows, because like a traffic stop or anything would have had him end up in jail. I think that might have been the rationale at that point. So I think he did end up eventually, he must have gotten that situation taken care of, because I do think he ended up coming in a couple of years after you had left and doing some stuff there in Clarksville, because I think he might have came with Bobby Eaton at least once.
Okay. Well, now I know the story behind that.
I at least that's what I remember being told. And I mean, getting that information from me and Rotten, we can take it for what it is, but it makes for a good story, so we can go with it. So right after Sweet Science, you get a second victory over CM Punk on September 15th of 2001. So do you think you also then right after that you beat Cash Flow, Isaiah, and then you beat Colt Cabana a second time. So you have 2 victories in singles matches against Punk and Cabana. Not sure how many independent wrestlers at that time can make that claim.
I know Punk did beat me the one time, because I remember taking the Pepsi plunge. That was the finish. And Cabana, I remember one time that we wrestled, there was a spot in the match where he gave me, it was like a tumbleweed leg drop, and he like landed right on my head, and it looks a lot worse than it actually was. And then there was another spot where he gave me a dive, and I didn't catch him as well as I should have, and I think he landed like butt first on a chair, and I just remember him going, "Oh, my ass," and stuff. But no, it was fun working with those guys. We had a tag. I remember there was a tag match up in Michigan. The only time I ever wrestled in Michigan, and it was me and BJ against Punk and Cabana. I remember that match was fun. I think Hero wrestled Roadkill on that show. Christopher Daniels was also on that show. And I remember afterwards we went to a Frisch's, and just a big group of us. And Punk was sitting next to this girl. I don't know who she was, but I remember the waitress came over and she's like, "Do you guys need anything?" And Punk puts his arm around her and he says, "I got everything I need right here." And she looks at him like, "What the?" Apparently they didn't know each other. They just happened to be sitting next to each other. But I just thought that was funny, Punk. You know, I got everything I need right here. But that kind of summed up his personality back then. You know, he could be moody sometimes, but he was a fun guy. Cabana, the same thing. He was a fun guy. All those, and Ace and Hero and all those guys. They were fun to work with, and I'm just glad that I had that opportunity.
So then shortly after that is when the superheroes explode, and we have the angle that turns Chris Hero and me babyface. Probably the last time in IWA Mid South that I was a babyface.
Yeah.
What do you remember the angle to cause the split and lead into the feud with Hero?
Yeah, I think I was champion at the time, and so I think it was kind of one of those deals where there was like some tension leading up to it, and then there was just the big breakup, and then Hero eventually beats me for the title. He becomes champion.
Because I know it was like a feud. the tension started between like Hero and Punk with wanting to face you for the title.
Yeah.
And then my memory of it was it somehow involved like you and Punk were trying to attack Patty. Does that ring a bell? And,
I think, yeah.
And I think you like threw a fireball and like Hero saves Patty and takes the fireball instead or something.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, Patty was one of the biggest baby faces
Yeah,
in IWA Mid South. Yeah, so that was a surefire way to get Hero over, you know, as a baby face, saving her. Yeah, the fireball thing, I remember I did it in a match with Blaze. And it didn't, I wasn't a master. I was no Jerry Lawler at throwing the fireball, and so maybe it didn't connect all the way, but I think that was something we did like, yeah, maybe like 2 times with the fireball and stuff like that. But and I remember when I wrestled, when the night that Hero beat me for the title, I remember Brent Blades was the referee, and I was kind of one of the deal where I was kind of bullying him a little bit. He ends up giving me a drop kick right into Hero's finish, which I thought was pretty cool. And then I remember after that, I kind of did the deal where I was so distraught over losing the title that I kind of went crazy for a little bit, you know, like, you know, Hero's a champion now and everybody's, oh, the attention's on him and people, you know, what about me and stuff like that. And we had a pretty lengthy feud, I think, after that. I remember we did like a taped fist match in Indianapolis, and the deal was I had a chain wrapped underneath the tape, and I, you know, KO'd him with the chain. I think the best match though that me and Hero had was a 2 out of 3 falls match in Dayton, you know, which is his hometown, and I remember that one probably being the best match that we'd had together. But yeah, I remember one point Nadia Nice got involved and Prazak got involved. But yeah, I really liked working with Chris. He was probably my favorite guy to work with. I'm just so proud, like Pong, I'm just so proud of everything that he accomplished in his career, because he's another guy that just worked his butt off and put in the work and was always studying tapes and everything. And now, you know, him working in AEW, being able to pass that knowledge on to, you know, the new generation of wrestlers, I think that's just like the perfect job, you know, for him.
Yeah, and he was made for that. That's what he was put on this earth for, is to be able to train and influence and mold the younger the next generation and get them ready. And then I see that just this weekend at the shows out in Vegas, he came back and did a like, what was it, a 5-minute match or something with one of the Japanese females or something.
I just saw the photo of Hero in the ring with one of the lady wrestlers, and it looked like Hero was there for a fight. He had his game face on. So yeah, I can only imagine I can imagine how that went. But
yeah, and I couldn't believe when they, because I didn't watch it, but I think the report I saw said that it was a 5-minute exhibition match, and I was like,
yeah,
5 minutes, Chris Hero, 5 minutes? Why?
Yeah.
He hasn't even come out to the ring yet at that point.
Yeah.
Depending on what which one of the theme songs he was using. And
yeah, I mean, WrestleMania weekend, it seemed like the whole wrestling world was in Vegas. So anything can happen. Anyone can show up and stuff. But I know he had a match in West Coast Pro a couple years ago. So yeah. So but yeah, like I said, just working with him was probably like the highlight of my time in IWA Mid South.
Okay.
And it's also my final opponent.
Yeah. Well, before we get to the final, I had just sent you a clip that came across my timeline randomly the other day, and I'm like, oh, perfect timing for this to come out.
Yeah.
And it was you taking a double chair shot from Bad Breed, Ian and Axel Rotten. Looking it up, it was February 9th, 2002.
Mhm.
You're teaming with Bull Payne and taking on the Bad Breed in an I Quit match, and you end up taking the double chair shot. It sounded like from the clip, maybe it might have been me on commentary saying that you had already given up and said I quit, and then they still those bastards still went ahead and gave you a double chair shot anyway. What is your memories of that, or did the double chair shot concuss you and you have no memory of it?
I want to say that was that the final show in Charlestown?
I think it was. I think it was.
Because I remember Ian was telling me, hey, this is the final show here. Once you get some good color, and
yeah, it was the last show in Charlestown.
So I'd never worked with Axel before. I think he liked me because I remember King of the Death match. I would always come out to the Sex Pistols, God Bless the Queen, and he's like, "Oh, this guy's a Sex Pistols. I like this guy." Him and Ian were doing.
Yes, they were fake British before you were fake British.
Yeah. But for the match itself, though, it was mainly just a brawl. I remember Axel kind of chipped my tooth a little bit with one of his punches. But the finish of that match was the memorable part. Because Bull took the double chair shot first, and he was standing. But before that, they had tied me up in the ropes, and after they gave Bull the chair shots, they were going to give it to me, but I said I quit. So the match is over. So they won, and like you said, they gave me the double chair shot, anyways, and they hit me. The impact was so hard that it broke one of my hands free. And I don't think I didn't get concussed. I didn't go unconscious. I saw a little white flash of light there for a second. But what annoyed me though was nobody came over to me after the match, because something like that, I'm like, okay, I'm dead. I need to be carried out of here. And so I'm waiting, and I still had the one hand tied to the rope, and I'm waiting for someone to come over and waiting. I think John Howard was the referee, and he'd already went to the back at that point. I guess, and by this point, it's already probably like 1 a.m. So I just ripped my hand down, crawled to the back, and that was the only bone of contention that I had. It was like
well, you were dastardly heel. No one wanted to help you.
Apparently so. It was just
those
an oversight.
Damn British guys don't deserve our help, I tell you.
Yeah, it was. It definitely. If I had to take the double chair shot or get scolded with the nacho cheese again, I would have to think about it. I don't.
You'd have to think about it.
That cheese was so damn hot. And the wiffle ball baseball bat with the thumbtack, that was probably the third most painful thing I took in IWA Mid South, which again, just plastic wiffle ball bat on its own, it's not, but you put the thumbtacks in. But yeah, I'm glad that was my one and only double chair shot from Bad Breed.
Yeah, I took a chair shot from Corporal once, and I took a chair shot from Balls Mahoney once, and the hell with having a double one. No,
one and done.
No.
Funny ball story, real quick. I think it was Blood Feast 2001 Thanksgiving. Balls had worked the show, and I remember everyone had left. It was like me, Hero, Balls were like the last ones left. And Balls was like completely naked, and he's talking to us, talking to me and Hero, and I had never made eye contact as strong. I did not want to look down and see balls of balls. But it was funny because me and Hero rode together and we're going home. And because at that point it's Black Friday, and back then it was Black Friday was a bigger deal, you know, than it is
Right.
now. And we had stopped at a Toys R Us because they were open, you know, because of Black Friday. We went in and we saw Balls's ECW action figure, and it was just kind of a funny thing. It was like, well, we just saw this guy, you know, 2 hours ago, butt naked.
Did you pick up the package and go, no, not anatomically correct?
Yeah, no, I was actually going to buy the figure, but the line was too long, and then we just left. But Balls was a cool guy, though. Just didn't want to see him naked.
So yeah, after that match, then ramps up the end of the feud with Hero. March 1st, you beat Hero in a taped fist match. Is that when you had the chain?
Yes.
Taped under the taped fist,
which I thought was kind of a clever finish.
Yeah, and then March 8th was the match you talked about where Hero beats you in Dayton 2 out of 3 falls, which leads to the final match between you guys, April 19th. Loser leave for 90 days, and Chris Hero beats you. Why was the stip for 90 days? Was there thoughts of that you would be coming back at the end of the 90 days? Did you know that this was going to be the end when you went into that match?
I knew I needed a break. Wrestling was kind of taking a toll on me physically. I was having some issues with my back and stuff. And I knew I just kind of needed a break. I didn't know going in that it was going to be permanent. So that's kind of why we did the 90-day step.
Okay.
Stuff and
to leave an out.
Yeah, and I was going to go back to school. I was going to go back to school at the time, so I was going to be busy with that. And but 90 days turned into 26 years, or 24 years later. I think just because like I love wrestling, but being a fan and actually doing it is two different things. And I don't know if I actually loved actually doing it as much as some people. I would have a lot of anxiety, before the matches and stuff. Because I'm kind of like you. I'm an introvert. I'm a little more open here because we're talking about something that I'm passionate about. But actually, doing it after the shows, my social battery and all that would be on low. But I kind of knew, though, once I had taken a break that I was kind of done with wrestling. If I'd have known going into the final match that this was going to be it, we could have did a permanent, loser leaves town forever type deal. But like I said, at the time, I wasn't sure. I just know I needed a break. Unfortunately, it wasn't one of our better matches, and it was because of me. I was just kind of having an off night. I remember that was a show. Eddie Guerrero was on that show as well, and Road Dogg too. But yeah, it just I was just kind of ready, to, like I said, take a break, and then the break became kind of a permanent hiatus. And at that point, I kind of lost touch with people because, social media wasn't a thing at the time.
Right.
But it was probably like 2014, through Facebook that I reconnected with people. And I actually got involved in wrestling again around that time, not as a wrestler, but more on the promoting side, because Shank Dorsey was starting a promotion in Columbus, and I was helping him with that, kind of co-promoting and just getting that off the ground, New Ohio Wrestling. And there was at one point where I actually did get back in the ring and bump around Ohio Pro Wrestling Academy in Newark, James Avery and those guys. And the reason behind that was, like, I could tell my friends and coworkers that, hey, I'm involved with this wrestling promotion, come out and watch. But if I told them, hey, I'm actually wrestling on the show, that would give them more incentive to show up. And so that was kind of the reason behind that. But the thing was, it's just like it wasn't the same as when I was 19 and I was in there for the first time, and it was new, and uh, being in like my mid 30s by that point and stuff. So so the comeback in ring didn't happen. But eventually I stopped being involved in New Ohio wrestling, and just got out of wrestling, altogether. Now I'm just a fan again, and I do go to Spot Monkey promotion shows. Toolman Tim Taylor runs and stuff, and he puts on really good shows in the southwest part of Ohio. So anybody out there that lives in that part of the state, come to the shows. He puts on, like I said, he puts on real good shows. Next show, May 1st in Batavia, which is outside of Cincinnati. So a Harambe Memorial Battle Royal for the gorilla that passed away almost 10 years ago. So at the Cincinnati Zoo, paying tribute to him.
Well, I think Bobby Boucher should be in that battle royal.
You never know.
Maybe he can be in there and find that gorilla that escaped from the zoo and punched him in his eye.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
But looking back, I'm happy, with the time I had in wrestling. I had I think of 3-year, because I had my first match in April of '99 and my last match in April of 2002. So I had a 3-year run there. But I'm glad that I did it. Had I stayed in wrestling, who knows? I don't think I was ever going to be a big star, but maybe I could have got a dark match, TNA or something. But I'm happy, and I made lifelong friends from it. So yeah, looking back, because I'm just glad I didn't have that regret, that I never did it. My best friend Shannon, he was always a big wrestling fan, and he wanted to do it, and he eventually started training at like 35 years old, and he had a good run, and he got out of it, and now we're both old and broken down, but we can both say that, hey, we did it and we had fun, and we don't have that regret, looking back.
Nice. Yeah, that's one of the things, don't want to have any regrets. I had regrets, so coming back to try to take care of some of those, and luckily what I do is a lot easier to be done than like having to actually get in there and wrestle. So maybe you can latch on somewhere, and I can send you some pointers on how to be a manager.
I know Spot Monkey Promotions has got Nate the Snake. He's a pretty good manager out of Cincinnati and stuff. And David Barnabas Spector, I don't know if you're familiar with him.
I think is he the one with the zombies?
Yeah, the Outbreak.
Yeah. So I just saw them at the GCW show that I went to a few weeks ago to hang out with Nate Webb. That was my first time seeing them.
I remember Spector when he was a photographer, when I was with NOW out of Columbus, and he wanted to get involved in wrestling. And I think he trained to be a wrestler, and it didn't work out. He was better suited as a manager. But yeah, he's really good. Like he's got the voice and the look and everything. And he'd worked a few Spot Monkey shows. I think he works primarily outside of Ohio now. But yeah, there's some still good managers, on the independent circuit, and you're back now, and to show them how it's done and stuff. So there's still some good ones out there.
Well, we'll finish this up with just a couple of questions here. What was the favorite match that you ever had?
Probably the 2 out of 3 falls with Hero. Like I said, that was probably one of my best match. So yeah, I'll go with that one.
Okay. The least favorite match, would that have been when you disappointed Tracy? Did you have something you like less than that, or?
No, I'll go with that one. Because that's still the one match I can't I can't watch. Like I had some really bad matches early in my career. Um, I had a match with a guy, Al be damned. That was his name. But this was like one of my first few matches, and it was bad. I botched a power slam. I hit my head on the ring post, which is why I have that dent in my forehead. And then he did a dive, and one of his legs hit my head, and one of my arms kind of went numb. And I'm just like, man, this is just one thing after another. But I'll chalk that up to just being, green. The tag match with Tracy, yeah, that was the worst I'd ever felt. Was just like, because I let him down, and stuff. So yeah, we'll go with that one.
All right, and then the last question. Anybody that you wish that you could have worked with and didn't get to. Could be somebody that would have been like a dream opponent partner, or you could just stick to somebody that like was on shows with you and you never got to work with, however you want to do it.
Well, we talked about the Jamie Dundee earlier. Like that was a match that was supposed to happen, and I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if I dodged a bullet or not with that one, but I would have liked to have worked with Tarek. We never wrestled. I think probably because I think we were both heels at the same time.
Probably, yeah.
But I had Tarek and I rode together a lot because he lived in Cincinnati, so it was on the way down for me. I would pick him up a lot of times, and we would ride together. And I learned a lot from Tarek, in those car rides and stuff. And he kind of opened my mind too about being more up on like current events and what was going on in the world, because at the time I was like in a wrestling bubble, so I didn't really keep up with the news or stuff like that. And after 9/11 happened, he's telling me about like the Taliban and stuff like that I didn't know anything about, and and I think me and Tarek probably would have had some good matches. But like I said, we were both heels at the time, so it never really happened. But I got to work with Kickboxer a couple of times. One time we worked a show. It was at a music festival in Dayton, X Fest. And so there was like, I don't know, 20,000 people there. There was the biggest crowd I'd ever been in front of. And so they had wrestling like in between the music and stuff. Okay. And it was like a midget ring. So it was a much smaller ring, but so that was pretty cool, working with Kickboxer in front of that many people. But yeah, I'll say Tarek. Okay. Yeah.
All right, so we'll wrap up here. Do you got anything to plug other than the Toolman shows that you already plugged? Is there ways that the fans can reach you? You got any Rugby Thug merch laying around that you need to push on people?
No merch, but I do have a YouTube channel because my coworkers, it was a lot easier to put my matches on YouTube than to let them see the DVDs and stuff like that.
Right.
So I do have a YouTube channel under Trent Baker. It's got IWA Mid South stuff on there. It's got Rugby Thug stuff before IWA. It's got when I was just plain Jane Trent Baker on there. I've got some IWA Columbus Back Alley Brawl shows, which was their weekly cable access show. And stuff. So if people want to go and watch that stuff, it's on there.
Okay, and they would just search for Trent Baker.
Yeah, if you put because the YouTube channel is under Trent Baker. So if you just put in Rugby Thug Trent Baker, you'll find the channel on there. I haven't put anything on there in a while, but yeah, it's on there. I think the matches with Road Dogg, Meanie, Punk, Cabana, I think those are all on there too. So. Okay. That's about it. I got no merch to shill.
Okay. All righty. Well, that wraps up another edition of Fannin's Flashbacks. I'd like to thank Rugby for joining me today. Remember to check out my YouTube channel at youtube.com/sportsfannin for IWA clips and matches and these podcasts. when you get to the channel, start by hitting subscribe, then look around and like some videos. But more importantly, if you have a subscription to IWTV, Independent Wrestling TV, ran by Smart Mark Video, please go watch the podcast on there. Let them know they made the right choice by giving me the opportunity to put the podcast on there. We add some clips from matches and promos that we talk about on the episodes. Episode 24, Guest Prophet of Ash, puts in a ton of time into editing these shows now to find the proper footage to add to the viewing experience. So make sure you tweet him and tell him thank you if you're enjoying the added footage. Tweet IWTV and Smart Mark Video and tell them thank you for adding Fannin's Flashbacks to their lineup. And if you aren't subscribed to IWTV yet, please do so. It's cheaper than Netflix, and the wrestling's a hell of a lot better on IWTV. The best indies in the world are on there, and you can catch a ton of old IWA or current product with their video on demand feature. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at jfannin73. And my next show on the comeback tour is Wrestle Arts, May the 23rd in Indianapolis. You can still get your tickets at Wrestle Arts Tix. That's TIX.com. Connor Hopkins and I are definitely accepting bookings before then. Connor's schedule is a little busier than mine, but there's still dates that can be filled for both of us. So reach out to either Connor or me on our socials and tell us you want to bring us in, and the Fannin family can be on your next show. We'll see if the schedule allows for it, and we'll be back on the next episode of Fannin's Flashbacks. So let it be written, so let it be done. Good day.